Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Ellsworth here at CoatingsCoffeeShop.com, and you are watching a Lunch and Learn. I am really excited because we're talking about Fluid Applied Restoration 101. So important, and this is going to give you some really tangible takeaways and advice and wisdom from one of the best, Chris Huettig from KARNAK. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Megan. I'm doing great today. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm going to learn something today, so I'm just really excited to get into it. And to do that, let's start with you just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you and Karnak.
Okay. And I said us because I think of us as the people behind me that you can't see, but it's the Karnak. It's the Karnak family. I mean, we are a 93-year-old company, been in coatings and restoration for longer than I've been around, and it's a great family culture. We're one of the leading manufacturers of roof repair and roof coating products. I've been fortunate enough to be at Karnak for going on my 27th year business from the very beginning when really all we had was flashing cement and aluminum coating to the wide chemistries the industry offers today.
Yeah, and there's so many. There's so many different types and versions of each type. So that's something we've done before in one of our lunch and learns, and we'll touch on a little bit today. Um, so today we're learning about fluid applied restoration, and our three learning objectives are number one, how to assess a roof. Number two, what is re-roof versus restoration? And number three, the benefits of restoration. So, like I said before, really tangible learning objectives today that I think everyone will be able to get some really good takeaways from. So, Chris, let's start with how to assess a roof. What is the first step?
Well, one of the first things I say if you're going to assess a roof is safety is first. When you're walking on a roof, it's not something we do every day, for some people. Others, they do it every day, but, we all need to keep safety in the forefront there. So I think safety is important. And when you're assessing a roof also, I actually have another lunch and learn topic maybe we can do in the future, but I call it conducting a roof inspection with a purpose. And what that means is that you're asked to do a roof inspection. You don't just willy nilly walk up on the roof and try to figure out what's going on. Have a purpose. It means be thoughtful in what you're doing, plan for it, have the right tools for what you're going to do, the right safety equipment. You've contacted the right people, and you have a thoughtful plan and order so that you're going there once. You're making the best use of your time, and you're gathering all the data you need to make an informed decision of whether this roof is a candidate for coating or it needs something else.
That's so important. Safety first, always.
Yeah, and when we're walking a roof in quotes, one of the first things to do is first walk the exterior of the building. Walk the exterior, look up at the roof. There are things there that are going to tell you what could be going on or what could be causing a problem to the roof or what is causing a problem that the roof is being blamed for that really doesn't coincide with it at all. You're looking at the facade, the edge metal trim, just doing a nice walk around the building. The second thing is walk in the interior of a building. Look for signs of leakage, of damage, of ceiling tiles. We've all been to an office and seen the tan ceiling tiles and know they had a leak at some point. Or paint peeling off the walls. That normally doesn't happen. There might be water coming down. And if you could see the underside of the roof deck, that can tell a lot too. If there's insulation there, if there's wetness, if there's damage, it's really important if you're walking a metal roof. One of the things ties in with safety is a lot of times a metal roof might have skylights. And when you're underneath looking up, you can actually see where those skylights are. You might go onto that roof and that roof may have been coated at some point and they coated over the skylights. So that weak fiberglass skylight looks as strong and robust as the metal itself. You can't tell the difference. So you don't want to fall through the roof. Again, that kind of ties into safety. So, you do want to do that. And we don't always get the chance to look on the underside of a deck. Sometimes there's drop ceilings and all that stuff. But take the time to do that. And now that we're up on the roof, and walking it, we want to pay attention to the areas where we know water can come in. So we're going to be looking at special attention to the terminations of where the roof ends, which means around the perimeter where the roof ends with the edge metal. We're going to be looking around skylights and curbs and penetrations, antennas, anything that punctures that roof membrane is always a good sign to take a look at. Uh, Other places where you could have damage or things going on are the walkways, from like a roof hatch or where a ladder gets set up to air conditioning equipment up there, because those are the paths that service people go back and forth, dragging tools, dropping tools, stepping on screws and those things. So those are usually key signs. Other things, signs of ponding. If there's ponding on this roof, there's extra weight that's been there. There's probably accelerated damage to the roof. And then lastly, kind of waterways where water would drain off the roof, because a lot of that water going off is going to kind of erode the roof, down. It's going to wear it out faster. So those might be areas where there's some issues. And then there's all the seams on a roof. Seams could be an issue too, depending on what type of roof you're walking on. It might be different for a single ply versus an asphalt roof as far as the level of attention. So those are all things we need to do when we're walking the roof to kind of keep in mind.
That's really interesting. Anything of note about roof drains, and any double checking on those as well?
Yeah, I always want to make sure there's a drain basket there that's kind of collecting debris. It always helps to know if those drains are actually functioning. You know, if you see some debris around a drain basket and you clear it and the water still doesn't really go down the drain, that's an issue. Time to call a plumber to snake that thing, and something's going on there. And just those areas, it's going to be sumped. So there's always water sitting there. If it's a northern climate, you're going to have freeze thaw. So there's probably some seams that are kind of, could be, damaged or just old, that kind of need some sealing repaired, or maybe the whole sump area needs to be redone. But that's always, where the roof goes into the drain ring, always areas you want to watch out for.
So, okay, and then the next step would be testing, right? And seeing, okay, you've taken account of what's going on the roof, but now maybe you have to see what's on the inside, and within the layers.
Yeah, when you're assessing a roof for a coating restoration, there's really two major things. The first one is the roof has to be dry internally. It's got to be dry. So you got to figure out, you got to have a plan to see if there is moisture in the roofing system. And the second thing, it needs to be sound. You can't have anything flapping around. It needs to be sound and be able to be watertight on its own before you put a coating system on. So that testing to see if there's water could include doing some infrared moisture detection. That's probably the number one way to find out if there is water internally in the roof. And then there's some other things. There's nuclear gauges, capacitance induction. All three of those collectively are three ways to do non-destructive tests on a roof to see if it's wet inside. And then core cuts are done a lot of times too as kind of a backup. So if one of those tests tells me there's wet, then I'll do a core cut to verify it is wet. That kind of just establishes a roof right now. Is it even a candidate for coating? Once we determine it's a candidate for coating, you run into, will my coatings adhere to it? Or what coatings will adhere to it? So you want to do some adhesion testing. I always feel like if you can, you may have a coating that the building owner wants that you had in mind. But if you have another coating, bring that as plan B, because sometimes plan B is the only plan that ever works sometimes. We
Yeah, or
figured it out.
C.
Yeah, so you want to do an adhesion test, So again, thoughtful preparation. Make sure I got rags. I got something to clean the roof I'm going to do it with. I got brushes. I got my samples. I got fabric, and it's always good to have a marker. Write down what you're doing in a nice Sharpie that's not going to wash away. Put a date on it, maybe if you need to as well, and then take a photo when you're done. But you always want to do an adhesion test. I know from our side, we like to see an adhesion test done on single ply membranes. They tend to have a lot of variance. And then anything that's got an existing coating. Because a lot of times people don't know what that coating is. They'll think it's something and it wasn't. You don't know. So test over that. And then lastly, just test over all the substrate conditions you see there when you're testing. So if I have a single ply that was previously coated, but only half of it was, we'll do your adhesion test on the uncoated as well as the coated section, so you got a good collective idea of what's going to work.
Yeah. That's an interesting point that you bring up of saying, you never quite know what it is, even if you're a seasoned pro. So that's something, to always keep in mind and maybe not get too cocky or ahead of yourself and doing the right process and procedures.
Yeah, you just never know, So I'm always cognizant of that, of what may be on there. I don't know it all. There's a few tricks I know. Sometimes if it's silicone and I put a little water, if I rub it with my finger, it squeaks like a mouse, kind of. It squeaks. Other coatings don't do that, so that's kind of a sign to me that it could be, and maybe other people have some other tricks they use as well.
Yeah, that's a fun pro tip. I like that.
Yes.
Okay, and then finally, decision. So they've done all the tests. What are some of the factors that lead to the final decision of this is the right project for, a restoration?
Well, there's so many decisions into that. First off, is just classifying it as is it a candidate for coding, which is a lot of work in itself right there. The other thing can be is you know uh, does this make sense? You're probably thinking, or the building owner is thinking, well, I'm weighing the options of a coating, but I'm also thinking of maybe I want to re-roof or if I want to even do that. So having the information to know how many roofs are on here, because if there's two roofs on here, that building owner's decision now comes with a little more financial burden because they can't put a third roof on. They have to tear down to the deck and go from there. The coating may make a little bit more sense at that point. Again, if it's a dry roof and meets all the criteria for that, it's going to be a better option for them. And some of the building owners don't always know they have that option. But when you're talking, say a new commercial roof could be anywhere from $6 to $20 a square foot, depending on what needs to be done, and the coating option is going to be a third of that. It can be $1.50 to say $4.50. It's a big financial win for them, and it really helps them make a sound decision if their roof is a candidate for coating. So I think it's worth kind of talking about that and having that go in there, because they're ultimately their budget. Building owners are going to have a budget, and they know what they can spend, what they can't, but they have to weigh the cost alternatives. And a lot of times who you're dealing with is going to have to answer to somebody higher, or a CFO, or the president, the owner of the company. So you gotta make sure you're making a sound decision. And then today more than ever, you hear sustainability and you hear the environmental aspect of it. And if a building owner knows that I can prevent all this trash and roofing from going into a landfill, and I can put a coating on with minimal waste, I'm going to do that. It's just makes sense. It's in a word, it's kind of like recycling. I'm just not throwing good stuff away. And when you got a good roof, it's a good roof still. Take care of it. I mean, the minute our cars get old and they need an oil change and they need the fluids changed, we don't throw the car away. We do those maintenance items because we know the value of the car. Well, the value of the roof is no different. It's an expensive proposition to replace a roof, so let's take care of what we have.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's such a and what a great way to kind of sell that to the building owner as well. Is like you don't just throw the whole car away, right? That's brilliant.
Yeah, I hear that used all the time, and I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but everybody owns a car, drives a car, been in a car. They know they've owned one at some point and can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, anything else to touch on this first learning objective of how to assess the roof?
I think those are pretty much the big things you need to watch out for. We kind of pointed out of all the issues that may arise on this roof. Every roof is different, so you can't just take one and think, okay, I've done that. I know it. I know what I can do. No, you don't know. They're like people. Everyone is different. You got to go check it out, walk it. There's a lot of things to help with inspections. Drones are being used more and more today. Um, Software systems that are giving you satellite views and measuring. I mean, that's great for measuring, but nothing gives you that feeling with your feet as they walk on that roof, and you feel if it's sound or not, if it's soft under the step, then you know something's going on. So You need to get boots on the roof.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Okay, so learning objective number two, understanding, re-roof versus restoration and when each comes into play. So, what would you say are some of the baby steps there?
Well, we kind of talked about the budget. That's always a big thing. But, there's also some other reasons why re-roof versus restoration. When you're re-roofing, it's going to kind of cause some turmoil on the building owner for days or even longer weeks, depending on the size of it. They may have to shut down an operation or move something to another side of the building. Um, some building owners can do that. Other ones, if it's a school, hospital, things like that, they can't shut down. And ultimately, you would like to do work that doesn't affect or impact the building owner at all. They can continue doing what they want inside. Coatings, when it's a candidate, you're able to do that. You're not tearing down to the deck. There's not stuff falling in, and you're not shutting down anything. You're able to work with what's there. So I think that's important. What are the building owner's needs? Those sometimes come into play too. For a building owner that is kind of thinking, I'm not going to own this building for very long, so I want to do some maintenance and I want to do something that's going to give this building some life because, then I want to keep my costs low and I'm going to pass this on to the next building owner. Other things come into play. I talked about the number of roofs on there are important. But ultimately, I think we hear all these things. It really comes down to a budget decision, you know, as long as it's a candidate. So, and I think, if building owners understood coatings and what they do, that they would feel like, that does meet my budget and checks all the boxes and is smarter. I want to go that route.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's huge. Educating your customer on the different choices that they have once you kind of figure out that roof is a candidate for a coating application. So, what is the difference between installation and application on a re-roof versus restoration?
Okay. That's a great question because it's one sometimes, again, you don't always think about. Um, you know, in today's world, when labor is hard to get, the the crews to do a coating application are going to be smaller than a re-roof. So that right there for a roofing contractor means, what, I can get some more work done probably. I can, instead of having one large crew do this large roof over there and all my resources are tied up, I can do three projects going on simultaneously with a coating application. So I'm using less labor. And typically you're using less materials, so I'm purchasing less materials, which means I'm not outlaying a lot of money that then I have to be reimbursed by the building owner later, which is always nice too. And the timing, the work to do, usually you're going to do it a lot quicker, a coating restoration, than you are a total re-roof. So, all those things really make it, really beneficial, not only for the building owner, we talked about them already, but for the roofing contractor. And then I didn't even mention the margins. Usually a roofing contractor's margins are going to be better for maintenance and restoration. They're making more money than those big projects where they're fighting everybody, every contractor out there, and the margins are very slim, there. So again, you're tying up resources, you're not making as much, and you can't do anything else because you got that big job going on. The coating just really fits into the business, much more friendly.
It really does. And also, I mean, there's less dumpsters, right? You don't need to get as many permits. You don't need, there's fewer things you have to do, in that aspect too, that make the job site cleaner and less intrusive as well. So, okay. So final product, what are the differences in final product of a re-roof versus restoration?
Well, everybody knows what the re-roof is. You're getting the brand new membrane, and that is great, and it is nice. But for what you're having to pay as a cost outlay, the coating restoration system is a very durable product. The coating technologies have been around for decades, and we've only gotten better. For a number of reasons. But the products out there are more durable than they used to be. They have more longevity that they offer. They're reflective, which gives us benefits there as well. And they're surfaces that are nice and that can be renewed when the building is maintained. A lot of these coating systems can be renewed and put on top of each other. So while you may say a warranty is 10 or 20 years, if the roof is taken care of, then additional coatings can be applied, and the coating can go on and live again and again. So they are just as durable as some of the roofing membranes. I mean, you're basically making a liquid roof membrane type system in the field versus one made in a factory and then applied and installed.
I think that's really cool. And to touch on the reflectance too that you talked about a little bit, the solar reflectance and kind of bringing that new life to the roof. That's really important now too with everything that's the Cool Roof Rating Council is doing, and then also the studies we've seen on the urban heat island effect. So making sure that you have that solar reflectance on a big commercial building or what have you is really important on energy costs as well for the building.
It is. Nowadays buildings have more insulation for new roofing than they used to, which some people think that does kind of counter that some, but just having the reflective coating itself, you have the energy standpoint, but it also makes the air on top of that roof cooler. And you have these air conditioners that are huge and expensive. They're pulling that air off the roof. They're cooling it down and putting it into the building. So if they start off by pulling in cooler air, they're already working less, not being tested as much. They're gonna that equipment's gonna last longer, which helps in that case too. And sometimes people don't think about that. The other thing is just the roof membrane itself. I could have all the insulation in the world there, so it's thermally sound as anything, but that membrane is still getting hot if it's dark, and it causes huge fluctuations in the heat cycle from cool at night to hot during the day, cool at night. It's a big gap. If I bring that temperature down and now it's cool at night, warm during the day, it's much smaller. It's less stress on the seams, the penetrations, all those things we talked about. And your roof lasts longer and you have less opportunities for leaks to occur because there's less stress on those seams.
Totally. Totally. Okay, well, I think we're moving into the third learning objective now, which is all of the amazing benefits of restoration, which we just kind of hit on already, but sustainability is definitely one of them. And we talked a little bit about, less waste, but let's talk about that a little bit more in terms of, continuing the conversation of the solar reflectance. So what are the benefits of restoration in terms of sustainability?
The biggest one in sustainability is that I think is that you're making that roof, you're giving it life. It's lasting longer. You're getting more service life per square foot per year for that roof, and that's the biggest thing because that's what affects the bottom dollar for these building owners. And that as a contractor, that's what they probably want to speak to. Most is that. With restoration, there's an aspect of maintenance, and that maintenance is really helping that building owner manage the roofing asset. So many times the building owner doesn't think about a roof. They let it go until something needs to be done, and at that point, it doesn't need to be done. It needed to be done. They're already past that point. When you get a leak in a roof, these building owners think, oh, that just occurred. That leak could have been happening for a month now. The insulation got soaked and wet enough and saturated that now it's coming in, but it had been leaking way before that. So to them, it's a way to manage their costs because it is hard for budgetary means of managing what it costs per year for my building. And there's statistics out there that shows you if you're reactive, you're going to spend 30 cents a square foot per year on your roof. If you're proactive, you're spending 14 cents a square foot per year on your roof. So I mean, that's a huge number, 50%. And when you're proactive, you're doing it on your terms. I'm having somebody come out tomorrow to walk the roof, to fix anything tight, button it up, clean my drains out on my terms. Everything else is like you're pulling your hair out, and it's like it's on a weekend, holiday. it's always the worst time, and then they got to pay more for that service of fixing something that they should have never have really had that situation. So I think that falls into play and is really big for building owners as far as the benefits of a restoration. There. Happy customers, I think, is a good thing. I kind of talked about maintenance, and I talked about extending the roof life, but better managing your expenditures is going to make a roof, um, a building owner who's got to manage that roof a lot happier. That's from their perspective, which is always good for a building owner. But there's always the perspective also, as well as the roofing contractor. Maintenance falls into that restoration. We need to make sure we're maintaining roofs, and that means they need to sell maintenance contracts. That's huge, and that's something that is discussed more now than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I hear it so much more often, having a service department, a service and maintenance plan that you get your home or building owners signed up on. And I think also that goes with, educating your customer and sharing that information that you just said, you're going to be saving 50% off cost if you're being proactive with a maintenance plan rather than reactive and always having it be an emergency. Um, yeah, and that it's so important too to, contractors' businesses now in having those returning customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that maintenance department and selling maintenance contracts means that they got a constant revenue stream. They have work on the books, so they got people who are going to be busy. It's proactively addressing things for their customers, which makes the customer happy. It also gives them an opportunity when they're doing those inspections. Yes, it's already been paid for, and this is what we're doing for your, biannual inspection. But many times there's things on there that they're going to call out that are above and beyond what that inspection entails, that they can write up as a revenue stream as well. I mean, if you got a roof that's got 10 skylights and you had a service call to fix one corner of the skylight, well, all 10 of those skylights were put in at the same time. So chances are the other corners of the other nine, they're going to have an issue tomorrow. So if you could proactively do it today, you're going to save a lot of headaches for that building owner. So it gives them that way to make some money as well. Happy building owners, happy property managers, they're more than willing to tell friends, coworkers about your company. And the word of mouth is really, important there as well. And ultimately, those maintenance contracts are going to generate re-roofing because you can do coating restorations, but not every roof is a candidate for a coating restoration. Not every building owner is diligent, and there's going to be a lead generating portion of that's going to bring in new work for you. So why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, and having creating that connection through, return maintenance with a certain customer, and maybe they own multiple buildings, maybe they have a friend that owns multiple buildings, and kind of creating that relationship will help, bring in more contracts too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They all talk. We want them to talk about good things. We don't want bad things to happen. We want good things, but they all talk. Or they like a lot of people, they leave one firm, they go to another firm. If they liked you over here, they're going to bring you over there, and again, it just grows your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, this has been so educational. I'm just going to go through our three learning objectives again for our listeners, and I hope everyone out there was taking notes and filling out the educational guide. And please go take the test so you can be entered to win a free lunch with your company. But the first learning objective was how to assess a roof. We talked about walking it, testing it, and the final decision. And then secondly, re-roof versus restoration, tear off versus cleaning, installation versus application, and lastly, the benefits of restoration, which kind of we talked about through the whole conversation. There's so many benefits. So, Chris, any last words on, any of the learning objectives, benefits of fluid applied restoration?
Any last words? Well, I'd like to just put a plug in for KARNAK. We are a leading manufacturer of coatings and repair materials. We truly care about the products we make, and we want to make the best products to give you, as the contractor, the best results. you know, sell the maintenance. Use KARNAK. That'd be my takeaway there. And for those that already use us, thank you so much. We know you have choices out there, and all of us at KARNAK, we're very thankful for selecting and supporting our company.
Absolutely. And thank you, Karnak, for sponsoring this Lunch and Learn and bringing education to all of our listeners and audience. We so appreciate everything you do and just the amount you all are dedicated to educating the industry and your customers. It's really, really great.
Thank you, Megan. And again, thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely. Everyone, please go to the Karnak directory on CoatingsCoffeeShop.com to learn more. You can see all the other Lunch and Learns they've done. And you can also go to the Read, Listen, Watch navigation tab on CoatingsCoffeeShop.com to look at all of our other Lunch and Learns. And please fill out the educational guide and take the quiz, and you'll be entered to win a free lunch on us. So thanks, everyone, again. And thank you, Chris, for this great educational Lunch and Learn.
Take care.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time on the next Lunch and Learn.